Do you have any idea who my father is? Those words echo louder in this courtroom than the sound of the gavel ever could. Good morning. Please, everyone, be seated. Before we address the matter before us today, there is something you need to understand about this courtroom, about this bench, and about what justice truly means in a place like this. I have been sitting in this chair for 32 years. Since 1992, in the Providence Municipal Court, I have looked into thousands of faces. Faces filled with fear, regret, anger, shame, and sometimes hope. I have seen people at the worst moments of their lives. I have seen teenagers steal food because they were hungry. I have seen parents make terrible decisions out of desperation. I have seen young drivers break down in tears after realizing how close they came to destroying a life, including their own. In many of those cases, I have shown mercy. I have offered second chances. I have believed in redemption. I have looked at people and said, I believe you can do better. And more often than not, they prove me right. But every so often, a case comes through these doors that tests that belief. A case that forces me to ask whether mercy has limits. A case that reminds me that justice is not just compassion. It is accountability. It is about protecting innocent people. It is about making it unmistakably clear that arrogance, entitlement, and contempt for others have consequences. This is one of those cases. Let me be absolutely clear, so clear there can be no misunderstanding. This courtroom is a place of respect. It is a place of dignity and fairness. Every person who walks through that door, whether dressed in a tailored suit or worn-out clothes, deserves basic human decency. I do not care how much money you have. I do not care who your parents are. I do not care what school you attended, what car you drive, or what neighborhood you live in. In this courtroom, everyone is equal under the law. That is not a slogan, that is a promise. And as long as I sit on this bench, now let us talk about why we are here. It is November 27th, 2024, 10:15 a.m. Courtroom 3A of the Providence Municipal Court. The defendant is 24-year-old Vanessa Catherine Ashford, born April 7th, 2001, a resident of Prospect Street on the east side of Providence, a graduate of Wheeler School, a private institution with tuition exceeding $42,000 per year, a Northeastern University graduate with a degree in business administration. She is also the daughter of Jonathan Ashford, CEO of Ashford Capital Holdings, a company valued at over $500 million, employing hundreds of people across Rhode Island, and none of that matters. What matters is what she did. On August 22nd, 2024, at approximately 50:00 p.m., Ms. Ashford was driving through South Providence, a working-class neighborhood, a residential area, a place where children play, where elderly couples walk in the evenings, where families live their lives trusting that drivers will obey the law. She was driving a silver 2020 Porsche Cayenne Turbo, worth over $130,000, at 75 miles per hour, 75. In a clearly marked 25-mile-per-hour zone. That is not a minor violation. That is not a lapse in judgment. That is reckless. That is the kind of speed that turns a vehicle into a deadly weapon. Elmwood Avenue is narrow. Cars are parked on both sides. Driveways open onto the street. Crosswalks are used daily by people who expect drivers to value human life. Ms. Ashford did not. But what happened next is what truly brings us here. When Officer Anthony Russo, a 14-year veteran of the Providence Police Department, pulled her over and asked a simple, professional question, she did not respond with concern or remorse. According to the police report, her exact words were, Do you have any idea who I am? My father employs half the city. One phone call and you'll be directing traffic in a parking lot. Those words matter because they reveal everything. They reveal a belief that money erases consequences, that privilege outranks the law, that a public servant doing his job to protect lives deserves intimidation instead of respect. Officer Russo remained calm. He explained the danger of her actions. He explained that driving 75 miles per hour in a residential neighborhood could kill someone. Ms. Ashford laughed. She took out her phone and began recording him, accusing him of harassing successful people, threatening to humiliate him online. She tried to turn accountability into spectacle. Officer Russo did not escalate. He did not retaliate. He did exactly what a professional officer should do. He documented everything, and he issued 3 citations: reckless driving, excessive speeding, and creating a public hazard. This case is not about a traffic ticket. It is about an attitude that places privilege above people, and that attitude has no place in this courtroom. Not today, not ever. He followed protocol. He did his job with professionalism and restraint, even while being treated with open contempt. That is what good police work looks like, and it deserves to be acknowledged. Officer Russo acted with dignity when dignity was not shown to him. But this case does not end there. In fact, that is where it becomes far more disturbing. After receiving her citations, after Officer Russo exercised restraint and chose tickets over an arrest she could have faced, Vanessa Ashford went home to her residence on Prospect Street and opened her TikTok account. Her username, entered into evidence, is Vanessa Ashford, official. At the time, the account had over 63,000 followers. 63,000 people watching, listening, absorbing what she chose to say, many of them young, many of them impressionable, many of them drawn to the image of wealth, influence, and a lifestyle presented as something to admire. And what did she do with that platform? She mocked a police officer. Exhibits D through H show videos she posted within hours of the traffic stop. I have watched them more than once. She ridiculed Officer Russo by name. She called him a wannabe hero. She referred to him as Officer Nobody from Nowhere. She laughed. She smirked. She framed herself as the victim and him as a joke. The first video was posted at 7:38 p.m., just over 2 hours after the stop. The caption read, "Kiosk got pulled over by the saddest excuse for authority I've ever seen." The following morning, August 23rd at 9:45 a.m., another post appeared. "Imagine thinking you can intimidate me, try harder." One of those videos received more than 18,000 views in under 24 hours. 18,000 people saw a young woman with money and influence belittle a public servant for enforcing the law. 18,000 people were shown that arrogance is something to be proud of, that accountability is something to mock. You might think that would be the end of it. You might assume that after facing consequences, after public attention, after citations that carry real penalties, a lesson would be learned. It was not. 4 days later, August 26, 2024, at 3:20 p.m., Ms. Ashford was captured on a residential security camera owned by Samuel Torres, who lives on Prairie Avenue in South Providence. The timestamp is clear, the footage unmistakable. There she is again. The same silver Porsche Cayenne, the same license plate, the same neighborhood, the same reckless behavior, as if nothing mattered, as if the law was optional, as if the safety of others was irrelevant. And when someone repeats the same dangerous conduct in the same place after being warned, after being cited, after being confronted with the consequences of their actions, that tells this court something very important. It tells me this was not a mistake. It tells me this was a choice. Either Ms. Ashford does not understand the seriousness of her actions, or worse, she understands them perfectly and simply does not care. It tells me she believes the rules do not apply to her. That her money, her status, her last name place her above consequences. I have been doing this job for 32 years. I have seen young people make foolish decisions because of peer pressure. I have seen drivers devastated by the realization that one reckless moment could have destroyed a life. I have seen defendants who came from hardship, who were never taught better, who showed genuine remorse. In those cases, I showed mercy. I reduced sentences. I offered community service instead of jail. I gave people the opportunity to prove they could do better. And many did. They came back years later to say thank you, to show me they changed. Those moments are why I believe in redemption. But redemption begins with accountability. And when someone demonstrates a pattern of behavior that shows open disregard for human life, for the law, and for basic respect, this court has a duty, not a choice, but a duty to protect the community. Now let me address something else that strikes at the very heart of this case. Between August 28th and September 10th, I received 9 phone calls to my chambers regarding this matter. I received 5 written letters, carefully worded, professionally drafted, suggesting this case be resolved quietly. 4 prominent individuals came to see me in person: representative, a senior attorney, a business council executive, a city development official, and each, in their own polite way, suggested the same thing, that perhaps a donation between $60,000 and $90,000 could smooth this over. That maybe this young woman had learned her lesson, that influence could substitute for accountability. Let me be absolutely clear. Money does not buy justice in this courtroom. Not $60,000, not $600,000, not $6 million. Influence does not erase reckless endangerment. Connections do not undo what happened on Elmwood Avenue. And no donation, no matter how generous, will purchase immunity here. Because the moment justice has a price tag, it ceases to be justice at all. I think about the families in South Providence, parents who heard an engine roar and felt fear spike in their chests. I think about children playing near the curb. I think about elderly neighbors crossing the street. Those people matter, and this courtroom exists for them. Luis Ramirez and his wife, Carmen, are 66 years old. Both are retired postal workers. Luis devoted 37 years of his life to the United States Postal Service. Carmen gave 34 decades of early mornings, long routes, harsh weather, and quiet service day after day, so this community could function. They are not powerful people. They are not wealthy. They are simply good people who did their part. On August 22nd at 5:08 in the afternoon, they were crossing Elmwood Avenue to visit their daughter, Maria, who lives on Prairie Avenue. They never made it across. They had to scramble back onto the sidewalk because Vanessa Ashford could not be bothered to slow down. 2 elderly people were forced to jump for their lives because a 24-year-old woman in a $130,000 car believed speed limits did not apply to her. That image stays with me, and I think about the young people watching this case, watching closely, watching to see whether the justice system treats everyone the same or whether it bends when money enters the room, watching to see whether intimidation works, whether wealth changes outcomes, whether consequences are negotiable. What lesson are they learning? What message are we sending them today? I also think about what could have happened. We are extraordinarily fortunate that no one was hurt. But fortune is not justice, and luck is not accountability. What if 8-year-old Isabella Martinez had been playing in her front yard on Elmwood Avenue that afternoon? What if 55-year-old James Chen, a school bus driver for 19 years, had been walking to his car at 30:20 p.m.? What if Mr. Ramirez had been taking his daily walk, something he does to manage his diabetes and stay alive? I have 7 grandchildren, 7. Their ages range from 6 to 16. My youngest granddaughter, Isabella Rose Caprio, is 6 years old. When I picture her riding her tricycle, drawing chalk on the sidewalk, laughing the way children are supposed to laugh, when I imagine someone barreling through her neighborhood at 75 miles per hour without a shred of concern for her life, it makes my blood run cold. Because this case is not about traffic violations. It is about potential tragedy. It is about funerals that did not happen by sheer chance, about families that were spared heartbreak by inches and seconds. Reckless driving does not just risk the driver's life, it endangers everyone nearby. And the victims, if there are any, are always innocent, always people who were simply living their lives, trusting that others would act responsibly. Now let us address sentencing. Assistant District Attorney Michael Thompson, an 11-year veteran of the Providence District Attorney's Office, has handled over 400 traffic cases with a conviction rate exceeding 90%. He understands the law. He understands deterrence. He understands public safety. He has recommended a fine of $12,000, a 2-year license suspension, 160 hours of community service, and 90 days of incarceration to reflect the seriousness of these offenses. Defense counsel, attorney Rachel Foster of Foster and Associates, is a capable attorney. She has practiced criminal defense law for 13 years and has advocated zealously for her client, as she should. She requests leniency. She notes Ms. Ashford's lack of prior criminal history. She argues that a $1,000 fine and 70 hours of community service would suffice. She reminds the court that the defendant is young, educated, and has her whole future ahead of her. I have listened carefully. I have reviewed every piece of evidence. I have read the police reports line by line. I have watched the TikTok videos posted on August 22nd and August 23rd, videos mocking law enforcement and daring authority to try harder. I have reviewed the security footage from August 26th, showing the defendant driving recklessly through the same neighborhood again. I have considered her age, her education, her background, and her lack of prior convictions. I have prayed on this. I have lost sleep over it. And I keep coming back to something simple. We have laws for a reason. We have speed limits for a reason. We impose consequences for a reason. That reason is not punishment for punishment's sake. It is protection. It is safety. It is ensuring that families can live without fear that someone else's arrogance will destroy their lives. What troubles me most in this case is not even the speed, as dangerous as it was. It is the attitude, the arrogance, the complete absence of understanding that actions affect other people with real families, real dreams, and real lives. When I look at the evidence, I see someone who has learned, perhaps not through words, but through experience, that rules do not apply to her, that consequences can be avoided, that money and influence will always clean up the mess. Well, not today, not in this courtroom, not while I sit in this chair. Sentencing is not about cruelty. Judges do not take pleasure in imposing consequences. Sentencing serves 4 purposes. First, punishment because wrongdoing must matter. Second, deterrence, so the behavior does not happen again. Third, a message to the public that this conduct will not be tolerated. And fourth, most importantly, protection of the community. In most cases, those goals can be balanced with mercy. But here we have multiple violations, a repeat offense within 4 days, open contempt for law enforcement, public mockery viewed by tens of thousands, attempted intimidation, and a complete lack of remorse. That tells me one of two things. Either the defendant does not understand the seriousness of what she has done, or she understands it perfectly and simply does not care. And either way, this court must act. Either way, it tells me this unmistakable truth. Anything less than a serious, substantial, and meaningful consequence would be a failure of this court's duty to protect the public. It would be a failure of my responsibility as a judge. Now, I want to address something directly because I know what people are going to say. I know the headlines. I know the commentary. Some will read about this case tomorrow or watch clips online and ask, why is Judge Caprio being so harsh? They will say I am known for compassion, that I give second chances, that I show mercy, and they will wonder why this case is different. Here is my answer, and I want it heard clearly. Compassion without accountability is not compassion at all. It is enabling. It tells people that rules are optional, that bad behavior carries no real consequences, that someone will always step in to excuse it, soften it, or erase it. When I show mercy, and I have done so hundreds of times over the last 32 years, it is because I see remorse. I see understanding. I see someone who knows they were wrong and wants to change. I see a mistake, not a mindset. I do not see that here. What I see is someone who believes she is untouchable. Someone who responded to lawful authority with threats, ridicule, and public humiliation. Someone who repeated the same dangerous behavior just 4 days later. Someone who learned nothing from August 22nd except that getting caught is inconvenient. The defense points out, correctly, that Vanessa Catherine Ashford has no prior criminal record. That is true, and ordinarily, that would weigh heavily in favor of leniency. But let me say this plainly, most 24-year-olds do not have criminal records. That is not extraordinary. That is the bare minimum expectation of citizenship. We do not reward people for simply not breaking the law until now. I have also heard the argument that she is young, that her brain is still developing, that she has her whole future ahead of her. And I understand that argument. I truly do. I have relied on that science in many cases. But at 24 years old, you are old enough to vote, to serve in the military, to sign contracts, to marry, to have children, to pay taxes. You are certainly old enough to know that driving 75 miles per hour in a 25 zone is dangerous. You are old enough to know that threatening a police officer is wrong. You are old enough to know that mocking a public servant to 3,000 followers is unacceptable. And you are old enough to know that when you are caught doing something reckless, you do not do it again 4 days later. This is not an innocent mistake. This is not a lapse in judgment. This is a pattern. And people with this level of entitlement do not stop until consequences become real. I have spent a great deal of time thinking about what justice looks like here. Justice is not only about punishing what happened on August 22nd and August 26th. It is about protecting future victims. It is about sending a clear message to anyone who believes money or influence places them above the law. It is about vindicating Officer Anthony Russo, badge number 428, who did his job with professionalism and restraint and was met with abuse. And it is about restoring faith in a justice system that too often appears different depending on who you are and what you can afford. I have weighed every argument. I have reviewed every piece of evidence. I have considered the law carefully. I have prayed on this decision because sentences like this are never easy, even when they are necessary. Therefore, on the charge of reckless driving from August 22, 2024, citation number 249753, I sentence you to the maximum penalty permitted under Rhode Island general law, 90 days at the adult correctional institutions in Cranston. On the charge of attempting to intimidate a law enforcement officer, I impose an additional 60 days to be served consecutively, not concurrently, on the second reckless driving offense from August 26th, documented by security footage on Prairie Avenue. I impose another 90 days, also consecutive. That is a total of 240 days, 8 months of incarceration. You will serve this sentence at the Women's Division of the Adult Correctional Institutions. There will be no early release, no work release program, and no special accommodations. You will serve your sentence under the same conditions as every other individual in that facility. Your reporting date is December 2nd, 2024 at 9:00 a.m. In addition, I impose a fine of $18,000, payable in full within 60 days. That fine will be divided equally, $6,000 to the Rhode Island Traffic Safety Coalition, $6,000 to the Providence Public Schools Pedestrian Safety Education Program, and $6,000 to the Providence Police Department's Officer Wellness and Training Programs. That money will serve the community you endangered. Your driver's license is suspended for 3 full years, effective immediately. At the conclusion of that period, you will not automatically regain driving privileges. You will retake both the written and practical examinations, complete a comprehensive driver safety course, and perform 220 5-hours of community service with organizations supporting traffic violence victims. This sentence is firm, it is fair, and it is necessary, because today this court makes one thing unmistakably clear: no one is above the law, so that you can see, up close and without filters, the real consequences of reckless driving, so that you can stand face to face with people whose lives have been shattered by choices just like the ones you made. People who woke up one morning expecting an ordinary day and instead were handed grief, loss, and permanent pain. That is why I am ordering you to complete your community service with victims and families who live with these consequences every single day. Furthermore, I am prohibiting you from operating any motor vehicle whatsoever during the entire period of your license suspension, 2024 through November 27, 2027, not with permission, not just this once, not for an emergency. If you are found driving at any point during that time, if Officer Russo or any other officer sees you behind the wheel, you will face additional criminal charges under Rhode Island General Law 31-1118, and you will receive a mandatory additional sentence of at least 1 year in jail. No exceptions, no excuses, no second chances. I can see the shock in this courtroom. Some of you think I am being too harsh. Others may believe I am not being harsh enough. But let me be clear about why I have made this decision. Here in courtroom 3A of the Providence Municipal Court, Vanessa Ashford must finally understand that actions have consequences. Real consequences. Not consequences that her father's $500 million company can erase. Not consequences her attorneys can negotiate down to inconvenience. Real, tangible, life-altering consequences consequences that follow you every single day. 8 months in the women's division of the adult correctional institutions is not insignificant. It is long enough to sit with your thoughts, long enough to reflect, long enough to confront the reality of what you did and who you chose to be. And if there is any capacity for growth within you, it is long enough to begin changing. But it is not so long that it destroys your future. You will still be young when you are released. You will still have choices. You will still have opportunities. You can still build a life. But only if you learn this lesson now, before your recklessness costs someone else their life. Because make no mistake, that is exactly where this was heading. It was only a matter of time. And I would much rather have you angry with me, resentful, bitter, blaming this court, than have you live forever with the knowledge that someone died because you believed yourself too important to follow the law. The 3-year license suspension is intentional in our society, especially here in Rhode Island, where public transportation is limited. Driving is something we rely on daily. We forget that it is not a right, it is a privilege that carries immense responsibility, because a vehicle is not just transportation, it is a machine capable of killing. When someone abuses that privilege as egregiously as you did, they must lose it for a meaningful period of time. You must experience inconvenience, dependence, restriction. You must learn that driving is earned through responsibility, not assumed through entitlement. The 18,000 fine and the 225 hours of community service are designed to ensure that something constructive emerges from this harm. That money will support families devastated by reckless driving. Your service will place you in direct contact with trauma victims, people whose pain is permanent. I hope that experience does what words clearly have not. I know what critics will say. They will say, I am making an example of you because of who your father is, because of wealth, because of privilege. And they are partly right. I am making an example, but not because of your last name. I am making an example because of your choices, your behavior on August 22nd, your contempt toward Officer Anthony Russo, your decision to mock law enforcement online, your willingness to repeat the same dangerous conduct just 4 days later. This was not a mistake, it was a pattern. Had you shown remorse, had you taken responsibility, had you stopped after the first incident, this courtroom would be having a very different conversation. But instead, what I saw was arrogance, entitlement, and a belief that consequences did not apply to you. I have been on this bench for more than 3 decades. I have seen enough to know that sometimes a warning is enough, and sometimes it is not. Sometimes people do not change until consequences become unavoidable. To the parents watching this case, teach your children respect. Teach them that police officers are human beings doing a dangerous job. Teach them that laws exist to protect lives. Teach them that money and status do not place anyone above accountability. Because failing to teach those lessons is not kindness, it is negligence. And finally, to you, Vanessa Ashford, you are young, you still have time, but this court will not allow your privilege to become someone else's tragedy. What you do with this lesson will determine whether this sentence becomes the turning point of your life, or merely the first of many consequences still to come. Court is adjourned.